Welcome to this special debate program on corruption and accountability, organized by the Center for Democracy and Development with support from MacArthur Foundation. I am Eugenia Abu, broadcaster and brand and multimedia strategy expert. I will be your anchor through the duration of this debate. We are live on Channels Television and on our Facebook page, CDD West Africa. As we march towards the 2019 elections, 4 weeks from now, citizens, political parties, electoral monitoring and management bodies are working hard to ensure fair and peaceful elections. Towards this end, and as part of the Center's activities to promote value-based campaign, the Center for Democracy and Development considered the prime catalyst and facilitator for strategic analysis, capacity building, and sustainable democracy in the West African sub-region brings you the big debate on corruption and accountability. Its searchlight is on leaders of political parties. As we all know, corruption all over the world is a drawback on governance and sustainable development. According to a foremost academic, Sowore In Abuja Debating, in 2009, no nation can prosper when personal will supplants the general will, and where established procedures are observed in the breach, and where governance is about self-enrichment instead of public service. Indeed, corruption is a cankerworm, and it leads to bad roads, maternal mortality, poor social services, poor education, and all of us must work hard towards its eradication. Let me, at this juncture, introduce those who would be under the searchlight today to discuss the issues at hand. We are having with us today the Allied Congress Party of Nigeria National Secretary, Chief Paul Isamadi. Chief Isamadi, please be upstanding. That's Mr. Isamadi. I'd like to warn and please let you know that you cannot cheer, you cannot clap, you cannot jeer. It's against the debate rules. So I'd like to please appeal to you to keep your hands beside you as we carry this through. The next person is the African Action Congress presidential candidate, Omoyele Sowore. Sowore, thank you for that correction. Mr. Sowore is the presidential candidate for African Action Congress, AAC. And the PDP, People's Democratic Party spokesperson for the Atiku presidential campaign, Mr. Kazeem Afebua. That's Mr. Kazeem Afebua. And the Abundant Nigeria Renewal Party presidential candidate, Mr. Tope Fasua, ANRP. Thank you for coming. And the Young Progressive Party National Publicity Secretary, YPP, Comrade Olawale Martins. These are the political leaders we have, and we will continue to update you if there are any further confirmations. We would now, at this point, go to a short documentary produced by the Center for Democracy and Development to set the tone for the discussion. This documentary is titled Anything for the Boys. Let's take a listen.
Nigeria and Afghanistan, possibly the two most corrupt countries.
I think it's been honest about it.
He's talking about what he knows.
Corruption simply means injustice. It simply means not giving to Peter what belongs to Peter, not giving to Paul what belongs to Paul.
Taking away what belongs to others, what is meant for all.
When you are qualified for a position, you are not getting the position. Somebody will bring his son or bring his daughter to occupy a position. Somebody who is not as qualified as you to occupy the position. It's corruption.
I don't need to say contractor, I beg. We must share the money. And when he shares the money, he can't do the work well.
There's no way you walk around with people who are corrupt and you think you can eradicate corruption.
If you go to the car park now, transport to Lagos can be 7,000. But on Christmas time, New Year time, they will say it's 18,000, 20,000. Well, is the road getting longer during Christmas and New Year time?
Anything for the boys? It's a common question in Nigeria, and it is an important question. But we'll get to this later. Corruption in Nigeria began long before its independence from the British in 1960. From as early as 1947, colonial commissions of inquiry were held to investigate cases of corruption. In 1956, the Foster Sutton Tribunal investigated the Premier of the Eastern Region, Nnamdi Azikiwe, for his personal ties in the affairs of the African Continental Bank. The tribunal felt that Azikiwe did not sever his connections to the bank when he became a minister, as was required by law, and continued to use his influence to further the interests of ACB.
Corruption is part of Nigeria's history, is part of us. The only thing that is there for us to do is to work towards reducing corruption.
Corruption being a plague in Nigeria, I would agree, because it's become a very blatant thing, a thing in your face, in your everyday life, in public institutions, in private sector institutions, and generally even in the way citizenry lives our lives. We've become used to it, it's become institutionalized in Nigeria.
Corruption is so rooted in this country.
During the years following independence, various military rulers came into power with different promises and motives to root out corruption in the country. But corruption grew. The regime of General Ibrahim Babangida is often attributed to the massive growth of corruption in the country. The return of monies and assets from the Abacha years is still being recovered 2 decades on. Since Nigeria's return to democracy in 1999, corruption continued to be at the forefront of national policy. President Obasanjo's rule from 1999 to 2007 saw corruption showcased on an international level with various multinational bribery scandals. It also saw his failed attempt to alter the constitution to secure a third term in office. President Jonathan's administration from 2010 to 2015 saw an even higher saturation of scandals, both on the international and domestic level, particularly in the oil and gas and banking sectors. The current administration under President Muhammadu Buhari is still dealing with the effects of corruption under Jonathan, as well as its own emerging scandals.
What is the cost of that corruption in procurement processes, which means wastage of public resources, loss of revenue, loss of income, bad roads, bad health services, medical tourism, you could name a lot.
When you have systemic failure, there is nothing you should expect rather than corruption. Today, we have individuals that are more powerful than government institutions. No. It's appalling.
According to the UNODC, the country has lost $400 billion to corruption since 1960. In the power sector, it is estimated that between 1999 and 2017, 11 trillion naira has been lost to corruption. That is $64.7 billion in the current exchange rate. Corruption can be seen in the Nigerian judiciary and its inability to successfully prosecute a governor who was convicted by a United Kingdom Crown Court for embezzlement and theft. This same man was alleged to have bribed an EFCC boss with $15 million cash.
He gave me cash, $15 million in bags, 2 heavy big bags, and I use it as evidence against him.
He received a hero's welcome after serving half of a 13-year jail term in the United Kingdom. Grand-scale corruption that has lasted decades can be seen in the Halliburton case, one that involved high-level officials from the United States and Nigeria. Corruption can also be seen in the education sector, where a snake allegedly swallowed 36 million naira in the care of an exams administrator. Yes, a snake. Beyond the statistics, the cost of corruption to the country is also intangible. It reduces the capacity of government to provide and protect its citizens. It tarnishes the image of the country to the world. It weakens the Human Development Index of the country. Corruption weakens the institutions of the state and disables them from functioning. It also blocks economic growth. Nigeria's transparency ranking has remained in the bottom percentile for the last 2 decades.
In assessing public services, the first thing we do is, how do I provide you with some remuneration that would help you facilitate the time in processing the service I'm trying to get? For example, if you go to the immigration office, you just sit in the immigration office and go and apply for a passport. You will see the beginning of corruption and the end of the corrupt acts.
Here in this country, we don't pay good, actions with commendations, and we don't punish wrong deeds with punishments. Then people that steal money, those that have stolen money, are being celebrated in this country. So everybody will want to steal money.
Corruption can be tackled. It may take some time, but with collaboration and a concerted effort to change, it can be reduced. Citizens need to believe that corruption is wrong and not profitable. People should not accept or give bribes or favor kingship over merit. We should be transparent and accountable in all our dealings. So back to the question we asked earlier. Anything for the boys? It's a common question in Nigeria, mostly attributed to the police.
Settle us. Just give us a 10,000 naira, man, I will command.
That I will part with my 10,000 naira on a vehicle I did not steal? No, sir. I can't do it. No. Capital no.
But it is also a question that asks if anything will be left for infrastructure development, for investment and progress in critical sectors of the economy if corruption persists. Will anything be left for the child born today to honest, decent civil servants, to have the opportunity and resources to live a decent, prosperous life, avoiding poverty, ill health, and poor living conditions? And if corruption persists, will anything be left for the boys and girls in primary school today when they become the workforce of tomorrow? Anything for the boys?
Anything for the boys. At the end of this short documentary, it is clear that there is a major corruption challenge that the political parties need to be talking about towards this 2019 election. They need to be telling us how they intend to address it. As I call up our discussants to the podium, let me again remind you of the ground rules for the audience. Please put your phones off or on silent. No clapping, no cheering, no jeering. Having said that, it's time now for me to invite the political parties, representatives and leaders here present today. And I'd like to start with the Allied Congress Party of Nigeria, ACPN National Secretary, Chief Paul Isamadi. Please take your position at the podium. As he makes his way up, I'd like to invite the African Action Congress AAC presidential candidate, Omoyele Sowore. Let me now invite the People's Democratic Party spokesperson for the Atiku presidential campaign, Mr. Kazeem Afebua. As he makes his way, let me invite Abundant Nigerian Renewal Party, ANRP presidential candidate, Tope Paswa. Let me also invite the Young Progressive Party National Publicity Secretary, Comrade Olawale Martins. The representative of the All Progressives Congress is unable to join us, although they were invited. Thank you, gentlemen, for joining us. This is the big debate organized by the Center for Democracy and Development with support from the MacArthur Foundation, reaching you live on Channels Television from Abuja, the nation's capital. Here are speakers' rules. No abusive language is permitted. No sweeping, unverifiable allegations. Each speaker has 3 minutes for each of the issues and questions raised. They will address those issues as presented to them. We have a timekeeper in the house, Mr. Peter Omale Jr., and he's sitting across from the podium. Mr. Omale Jr. will be ringing his bell for the first time when you have 30 seconds left. And when it goes off a second time, your time is up. Please help us to have a good outing by staying with the rules. I'd like to start with the ACPN National Secretary, Chief Paul Isamadi. Let us ask all of the parties to respond to this question, but we will start with Chief Paul Isamadi. How does your party assess the impact of corruption on Nigeria's national development? And despite our constitution and our laws, which make corruption a criminal act, accountability mechanisms do not work well in Nigeria. What is your take on this?
Yeah. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for the question. My party, Allied Congress Party of Nigeria, we intend to fight corruption by strengthening all the institutions that are supposed to be fighting corruption. Corruption is an endemic problem to Nigeria. The cause of all the problem you see, be it Boko Haram, be it anything, lack of infrastructure, is all based on corruption. So my party, if elected into office, has a lot of plans on how to eradicate these things, not to pay lip service, because we have seen in this country that it's been lip service. I will fight corruption, I will fight corruption. Some even tell you that there is no corruption. So our party will fight corruption from its roots. We will not make mistakes. We will punish corrupt people adequately, and we will celebrate people who are found not to be corrupt. Nigeria does not reward excellence. We will reward excellence and encourage people to stay away from corruption. Presently, as we have in the past and presently, we encourage corruption by the policies of government, by their deeds. We have enabling laws to fight corruption in this country. We have all the agencies empowered to do it. But the question is, are they doing it? Are they living up to expectation? The answer is no. We see it every day. If we go to any, if I want me to go on and on, if you go to immigration office like your program just showed now, you cannot get your passport without spending extra money. And we see these things and people say, we are fighting corruption. How are you fighting corruption when these things are done openly? You could travel on the road, you see it openly, see it manifest. So what we are saying is that our party believes that government is not fighting corruption. And if we are voted into power, we will fight corruption and people will see it. It does not take a century to eradicate corruption in a country like Nigeria. Thank you very much.
Presidential candidate for the African Action Congress.
Thank you for your questions, and I want to say good morning to everyone here. I have been able to work and in a capacity in which I've fought corruption as an individual almost in the last 12 years. And I can tell you that the reason why corruption is endemic, especially politically, is because of the way our political parties are formed. It's because of the way they are funded. It's because of the way they recruit their candidates and the way they get into office. Interestingly, the only party that did not come to this debate today is supposed to be campaigning, is supposed to be the party that fights corruption. But they are not here because they want to perpetrate the biggest corruption of this era in the next few weeks. That is vote buying, which is a political corruption that is going to destroy our democracy. I'm talking about the All Progressives Congress, APC. And I hope they are watching us today. I hope they are watching here in Abuja. That would have expected either their party leader or their presidential candidate to come and explain to us how he is going to fight corruption when his party at this time is partnered with some of the most corrupt persons in Nigeria who are being celebrated in their party. But let's talk about our own party and what we intend to do. The problem with fighting corruption in Nigeria is that we do not have anything preventive, mostly, to ensure that corrupt people don't lay hands on our resources. And most times, we go after them after they have already taken whatever is available for everybody to themselves. So there's no prevention. And the second level where we try at all is that of enforcement. And enforcement has become a theatrical process in Nigeria. It has to be celebrated, it has to be dramatized, and at the end of the day, the people who are really corrupt never get caught. Even when they are caught, it depends on which side of the aisle they belong. So the third level of our own intervention is, of course, consequences. The problem with Nigeria and fighting corruption is that we do not deliver consequences on corrupt people. It is the reason why some of them have the temerity at this time to be running for office in our country. The guys to my right, the PDP people, and of course the guys who did not come here today. So we will deal with corruption very, very severely, and the people who will bear the brunt of it are already looking at me and they know what we'll do to them.
Let me remind you that sweeping allegations are not permissible. I'll advise that you stay with what your party is going to be doing, and name calling will, because once you start name calling, everybody else is free to be able to do name calling. So let us be guided, please. I'd like to appeal that we are guided.
Moderator, I think our party is saying that it will deal with corrupt people. Corrupt people have address.
Your 30 seconds is up. Mr. Timekeeper, does he still have time? When we come back to you, you may have your time.
All right.
Mr. Febua, People's Democratic Party spokesperson, Atiku presidential campaign. What is your take on why corruption is not going anywhere and accountability mechanisms do not seem to be working well, and how your party assesses the impact of corruption on national development?
Thank you for the opportunity of this debate, and thank you for also applying some caution on the part of the AAC, because if we want to go into name calling, we might not get to the nitty-gritty of why we are here. Because the last time I understand, Sowore emerged, formed a party, emerged the presidential candidate without due process. But that is just aside. And so, for me,
please, let's not chair. Let's stay with the issue.
Yeah, stay with the issue. It is going to be a collective responsibility of Nigerians. We will not subscribe to the idea of seeing government as one industry fighting corruption for the people. There has to be a deliberate, conscious effort to conscientize and mobilize Nigerians to own their country. Owning their country and believing that this country, it is not the hegemonic property of certain categories of persons. That way, Nigerians who want to invest in the country with respect to issues you want to put in the front burner. But where you have a system that encourages, you say government is fighting corruption, your political party is going to fight corruption. I think a government that has power can only set up the relevant institutional framework that will help to mitigate the incidences of corruption. And doing so, the government must insulate itself away from it, ensuring that there's some level of independence, non-partisanship of the agencies that are set up by law to fight corruption. Where you have a chairman of an EFCC, for example, wearing the lapel pin of the president, then he has already taken a position. That alone sends the wrong signal, and that's why the perception of him becomes subjective. So for moving forward, we are going to strengthen the institutions, ensure that they enjoy transparent level of independence, non-partisanship, and also use technology that will create an infrastructure of software that can make government business to run end-to-end to promote accountability, transparency, and probity in governance. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Would like now to go to Mr. Tope Fasua, presidential candidate, Abundant Nigerian Renewal Party.
Thank you very much, and it's great to be here. I want to say thank you to CDD for inviting us here and for focusing on this very important topic, corruption and accountability, and for their efforts in having inclusive debates, as against some of the ones that we have seen in recent past in this country, where the basis for inviting is opaque. That said, I want to also call our attention to a very trite fact, that we are here today and Nigerians are agitating because of one simple fact. For the past 20 years, 2019 makes it 20 years, in our new experiment with democracy, that we have been oppressed, traumatized, and dehumanized by a certain set of people. And those set of people are in these two parties that we're talking about. And that is the fact that Nigeria has now emerged, according to Oxfam, as the most unequal country on earth in terms of inequality. And according to the World Bank and UN and all that, we're also the country with the highest number of poor people, the highest number of out of school children, the highest number of maternal mortality and child mortality. And I think this is very, very important, else we'll be trivializing why we're here. And so it is actually quite disgusting that we'll find a scenario where the most important party in this regard will choose to ignore this very important, perhaps the most important debate that we could have in this country. That said, I represent the party called ANRP, and as you can see, our logo is a computer, meaning that we are the technology party. We're the party for the youth, for the young at heart, for the students in this country. Of course, if anything was going to solve corruption in this country, technology is going to be very, very central. Like we say, technology doesn't lie. Mathematics doesn't lie. It's when human beings interfere that they begin to do all sorts of things. Corruption, as defined, is just basically taking undue advantage, all right, for your personal benefit or for the benefit of your tribe, your religion, your clan, your girlfriend, all sorts of things. That's what corruption is. And so it's not only monetary. There are different levels of corruption. There's the one we see on the streets. There's also the ones we see in offices, bureaucratic corruption. And then there's what they call grand corruption. Grand corruption, like we saw in the documentary that I just showed, and the bought in 170 million. Nigeria happens to be a country that you will begin to believe that this country was created to be looted. And it is totally unconscionable $480 billion have been stolen from this country as of 2017, according to a report by Chatham House. You know, so basically, and what this does is a scenario where basically we can't even do the basic things for ourselves. Our children are becoming emaciated, undernourished, and what have you. Our schools have collapsed. So we're going to be looking at technology. We're going to be looking at dealing with the problem of inequality. We're going to be looking at the provision of public goods like schools, like education. We kill the public sector for public schools in this country. All of those things have to come back so that our people begin to be rehumanized and also begin to feel like proper human beings. Thank you very much.
Thank you. The National Publicity Secretary, Young Progressive Party.
Yes. Thank you very much for this singular opportunity to represent the Young Progressive Party on this all-inclusive debate. Let me start by just saying I will not really join issues with what the previous parties have done. Rather, I will be here to state what our party will do. But I will not, be able to situate things without, explaining how we got to where we are. Now, corruption is anti-development. And in essence, what I'm trying to say is this: it shares an inverse relationship with development. Now, the higher the corruption, the lower the rate of what? Development. The only difference between developed and underdeveloped countries like ours is the fact that this is the rate of development. The rate of corruption being minimal and what? Development getting higher. So that said, are we saying there is no corruption in these other countries? The answer is no. There is absolute corruption. But the difference is this, that the rate, the degree of corruption is low. So what are we going to do differently? The fact is that there is this what we call value system decay. Our value system as a country has totally collapsed. And that is what the developed nations hold in high esteem. Have you ever wondered that gone are the days where we begin to say good name is better than money? It's no longer there with this generation. But you agree with me that we used to have it with past generation and even our fathers before us. Now, secondly, we begin to look at the issue of the fact that there is no institutional framework to fight corruption. An individual cannot be bigger than an institution. When you do not have an institution that is devoid of external interference, how can corruption be fought and won? It is actually impossible. And that is why we've done a forensic analysis as to be able to situate the problem with Nigeria and how we intend to tackle corruption. And that is one, we are going to strengthen our value system. Two, we are going to look at the issue of leadership. There's a need for this moral and ethical leadership. We don't have them. What we have today is we see people who just thrive on the altar of nepotism. We don't have leaders who have this conscience to deliver the goods for this country. And three, we are going to review the estate law. The law as we presently have it is an incentive for corruption. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I'd like again to remind you that the Center for Democracy and Development set up this debate in order for the citizenry to be able to be part of issue-based campaigns. And so I'm going to give another opportunity to you all, and I'm going to start with you, the Young Progressive Party, to talk about the strategies which you have. And of course, this question applies to all the political parties here present today. What is your party's strategy for combating corruption? The time frame for a successful implementation to wipe out corruption, and how feasible is this?
Yes, thank you very much. We intend to apply a systematic approach. Our approach is going to be the one that is centered around the use of ICT to tackle the problem of corruption. We are going to reduce this interaction between individuals. And that is one of the greatest reasons for corruption. Now, when you look at official corruption and you begin to analyze it critically, two problems that have been identified is the issue of budget padding and the issue of contract inflation. After an analysis, we discovered that over 90% of the current corruption problem we are having is as a result of these two sources that we've identified. And how do we intend to tackle this? We will use what is called external forensic auditing. We are going to subject every budget every year to external forensic auditing. After what the executive would have done, and that is our party, and after it must have, before it goes to the National Assembly, we would what? We will ensure that it is being what? Audited, so that all the line by line, items would be looked at to see that there's no duplication. Secondly, we are going to, the issue of what is it called? Contract inflation. We're going to automate the system. It's too bad that at this point in time, when we begin to see warfare being used, you see jets being used in modern warfare, the attitude of fighting corruption is still like you are using bow and arrow in this part of the world. Automate the system. Make sure that procurement is something that is done electronically. You don't need to say, okay, I want to. We are actually what is it called? We are trying to bid for contracts, and at the end of the day, you begin to have personal interaction. No, it's going to be done electronically. The process of bidding is going to be done electronically. The process of winning contracts, vetting capable companies are going to be what? Done electronically. And that in its sense would reduce drastically the issue of corruption in this country. Because whether you like it or not, official corruption is the main reason why we are where we are today. And the only way to put an end to it is to be able to reduce the human effect. Let systems, build systems that will do it appropriately. And this we are able to achieve within 4 years because we have stipulated, set out procedures on how this is going to be done. Thank you very much.
Abundant Nigeria Renewal Party, presidential candidate.
Thank you very much once more. I want to first of all say that with due respect to my colleague from YPP, when we want to talk about solving problems with technology, we still remain the technology party. And of course, you can't solve corruption problem with a broom or with an umbrella, though we can permit those guys who are coming with two open hands. They seem to know what they're doing, but okay, well, we can bring them on. But we are the tech party. And you can see from the little marginal progress that have been made recently in terms of BVN, in terms of TSA, which is actually not the product of this government, but has been something they've been working on in this country for too long. As a matter of fact, the tragedy of things like JIFMIS, TSA, BVN was that it took too long. Sometimes they were cooking this thing for 15 years. And it could have been done better. But we can also see a scenario where just about a week or so ago, it was announced by the DG budget, Mr. Akabweze, that some MDAs are sitting on 2.8 trillion naira of Nigeria's money. In fact, by the end of last year, 2018, the total revenue due to federal government that they got was 2.8 trillion. However, another 2.8 trillion, which is exactly the same amount, was sitting with some MDAs. Now, the point is this, again, if human beings don't get involved and try to cock up technology always delivers. All right, so the whole idea is to be able to get the money away from the hands of these people who are so hungry. And I must quickly say that what we call corruption in this country, a lot of it is addiction, truly. It's an addiction now. Let's place it exactly where this is a psychosocial analysis of this problem. A lot of it is addiction, a lot of it is psychological problem. We want to be able to take people out and say, listen, go and test this man if he's okay. For 2 weeks in Yaba left. And then they come back straightened. All right? Or rather, we take them out of the system. It is true. You see, because again, now, but what we're going to also do is to lead by example. In our party constitution, inside our party constitution, it is there that any one of us who wins an election, and by God's grace, when I become the president of this country, May 19, 2019, we are going to, without compulsion, without being pushed, to declare our assets openly. Of course, this is something that can have salutary effects on the rest of the country. So, leadership by example is great. Technology is very important. Psychological tests of the people who are running government, very important. Also very important, I'll say before I stop, that there's something called the CAFR, Comprehensive Annual Financial Return, that must be published every year by every MDA of government. Instead of them publishing the obituary of their DG's mother, the birthday of their DG's daughter, and so on, what they are required to do by law in this country, and which we are going to enforce, is to publish their accounts.
Thank you very much indeed. I'd like to remind you that you've got 3 minutes, so it's important that you stay with the issues so that the audience here and at home can hear what the strategy of your party is in this direction. People's Democratic Party spokesperson, Atiku Presidential Campaign.
Thank you once again. I would like to remind us that the global definition of corruption is monopoly plus discretion minus accountability. It is the monopoly power of the individuals that leads him to abusing his discretionary powers. So what we'll do as a government will be first to ensure that we deny the institutions and agencies fighting corruption, we deny them of that monopoly power. Rather than have a chairman taken from the Nigerian police as EFCC chairman or ICPC, you have a board made up of distinguished Nigerians who have proven track record of integrity and accountability. Because the history that we have, the perception of the Nigerian police, is not one where you can find angels, quote and unquote. Of course, we do realize that Nigeria is a country of sins without sinners. You see, every time they say this one is corrupt, this one is corrupt. Look at the individuals who are making those commentaries. They too are enmeshed in endemic corruption. So as a government, once you are able to deal with the issue of monopoly of powers, which leads to abuse of your discretionary powers and taking away accountability, you will now have to ensure that there are special courts created, established to try corruption cases. And those special courts will be given the unfettered independence to be able to take action and conclusively deal with incidences of prosecution and abdication of corruption cases. That way, rather than spend 12 years pursuing one individual from 2005 before you get a conviction in 2019, there will be a time frame upon which those individuals who have been so identified or alleged to be corrupt will be prosecuted and judgment followed through. We will also promote the culture of encouraging whistleblowers and protecting witnesses. That is why I said earlier on that there's a need for citizen ownership of government, and there's a need for us to own our country. Because if the people derive the power to interrogate public officers, to ask questions and raise doubts and concerns, then chances are that the whistleblowers will be having better protection under our government to deliver the right information to government for prosecution.
Thank you very much indeed. I'd like now to quickly go to the African Action Congress to address the strategy his party has for eradicating corruption, the timelines, and how feasible this is.
Thank you. Let me quickly just respond to my friend about the transparency of our party's election. It was beamed live to everyone, and we didn't pay anybody $5,000 to vote for our presidential candidate. We didn't take the BDCs from everywhere to Port Harcourt. Having said that, it is very, very important that in dealing with corruption in Nigeria, we start, as my friend said, using technology to aid prevention. But the problem with our friend is that he didn't even know which technology is out there to use for it. They have a computer that probably don't have software in NRP. So there's what they call blockchain technology these days. There is encryption that you can use to because our biggest problem, honestly, with corruption in Nigeria is the opaque nature of how we do our transactions in the public sphere and the lack of transparency in the way we conduct our businesses. The moment you remove that, all the thieves will be hung out dry, because before they get anything done, we have seen it, we have tracked it, and we ensure that we nip them on the board. And this will apply to every sector of our institutional public life. You know, so if we are doing contracting, it must be transparent to all. There's no reason why an average Nigerian cannot tell how much we are making in the so-called TSA. How much is there on the daily? We're entitled to it. How much are we spending? How's money moving? The second thing that we need to do is to ensure that a lot of our assets that belong to individuals or the country is also publicly available. The land registry of Abuja, you cannot find it because the whole of Abuja is owned by a few people. That should be online. The asset declaration forms of our public officers should be something you can download without having to go through it. And we don't have to having to go through, you know, the eye of the needle. But most importantly, let's also talk about enforcement. We have enforcement agencies for, you know, that are fighting corruption in this country. They don't have to be police. They don't have to. We can train people who can enforce our anti-corruption laws. How do we do it? Even sometimes, ladies and gentlemen, when money is moving around, there's paperwork and there's also paper trail. We have an NFIU. They know when thieves are stealing money. But if you don't put the right people there, you are wasting your time because they will never whistleblow on these guys who are stealing money. But the last thing I will say is consequences. I and our party will remove everybody who has a national award who was shown in this movie by CDD today. We will remove all their national awards, take it back from them. All the GCFRs, the GCONs, and
thank
all
you
the
very much. Your time is up.
Corruption.
It's time
so that
to.
They will know, young people will know that it's not good.
Your
to
time is up, sir.
Allied
like Congress Party of Nigeria, National Secretary.
Thank you. Thank you. Our party will fight corruption, like I said, from its roots. You don't just, if somebody is sick of malaria, you administer a paracetamol, Panadol. It only brings down the headache and the malaria continues. So we, as a party, if elected, will fight corruption from its roots. Let me give us a little analysis so that we can understand why this corruption is ravaging everywhere. If I sit down and see my colleague engage in corrupt practices and is thriving, and I am not, it makes me think, even as holy as I may be, it makes me to think, probably this can be the only way. Our party will fight corruption right from even inside the churches. Because, to tell you the truth, make no mistakes, the churches have encouraged corruption in this country. Let me explain that. In those good old days, I'm an old man now, when we were young, we saw people in churches. If you commit a crime against society, the church will rebuke you and you can't come into this, communicate you. Today, you commit any crime, the churches celebrate you. They encourage corruption, whether you like it or not. That is, we are going to fight corruption down to its roots. The traditional institutions, they give awards just like a government of the day. They give you GS, whatever, GSA, whatever, they give you GSM or whatever. They give this to people who are corrupt, who have looted our treasury. And our people will look at it, oh, so probably this is the only way. let us also look for a way to loot so that we can get these awards and honors and these traditional titles. So fighting corruption in this country has to take a different dimension. Apart from that, our government is going to seriously make the institutions, strengthen all the institutions that are empowered to fight corruption. We are also going to take the National Orientation Agency in Nigeria, for example. They know that, everybody knows that corruption is our problem. They are not, I repeat, they are not doing anything about it. We need them to go, we need every agency of government to go and enlighten the people continuously, even down to the secondary school. Corruption will be in our government, it will be what from the curriculum of schools. It will be taught in primary, secondary, and the tertiary institutions. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much indeed. You're watching The Big Debate, organized by the Center for Democracy and Development with support from MacArthur Foundation, reaching you live on Channels TV. Facebook live stream, CDD West Africa is also open for you to participate. We have come to the one half of the discussions on corruption and accountability, and it's time for us now to take a look at our audience in the House and invite them to join. Our time, as you know, is limited, and so when we come to you to ask your question, please ensure that you stay within bounds. We expect you not to go beyond 30 seconds to 1 minute. And we're going to warehouse the questions, so I'd like to urge our speakers to please pay attention, because when we do the first round, we'll come to you and give you 2 minutes each to try and address some of the issues that have been raised. And so I'm going to start from the various sections that we have in the House. So I'd like a show of hands, please, so that if you have questions that you wish to ask, you indicate by a show of your hand, and I will come to you from a descriptive perspective. So if you see me saying the man with glasses or the person with a white dress, there's no disrespect meant. It's just so that our cameras can pick you and you would know that it is you that we're addressing. Show of hands. Thank you. We would like to start with the lady here.
Good morning, all. I'd like to ask a question in line with the background given to us. My name is Dr. Dayo Kusa. I'm an independent consultant and conflict transformation expert based in Abuja. I want to ask a question, anything for the children, because the beginning of life is vital. 2.5 million children die annually from extreme malnutrition. That means before the age of 5. And it has a lot to do with corruption in the health sector. Also in the lack of salaries for their parents and so forth. The beginning of life is important to me as a mother, as a citizen of this country. What would your party do to ensure that new lives go beyond 5 years, become what they need to be in this country? Some of them could even become presidents. But when they are cut off before the age of 5, nothing happens. I thank you.
Thank you very much indeed. I'm going to the second row in the House. That is the midsection out here. And let's see if we can ask a member of the young community to address us. The gentleman in the third row in a white, yes.
Okay, thank you very much. My name is Inyobong Hussein. I represent Policy Alert. Yeah, I would like to focus on administrative corruption, which is carried out by low and medium bureaucrats. Now, we know that for reforms to be carried out to eradicate administrative corruption, it has to be like a carrot and stick approach, whereby you improve the basic living conditions of bureaucrats while also instituting mechanisms to monitor performance. So I'd like to ask, what's your ideal minimum living wage, and what's your clear-cut, actionable plan to ensure that the average Nigerian earns a dignified minimum living wage? Thank you.
Thank you. We're going to the third row, and I'll take somebody from the back. The gentleman with a biro in his hand. I can see you from here. Yes, there you are.
Good morning, all. My name is Mohammed Ibrahim, my father. And I just want to ask one question to all the representatives of the parties. We all know what's the problem, but I don't think you have given us a convincing strategy on how to tackle corruption and accountability, as Eugenia raised, with time frames. One thing I think we keep forgetting is what is the role of the civil servants in terms of tackling corruption. You may have all your policy frameworks, you may have all your technologies, but you need people who will carry out these policy frameworks. We know what the welfare packages of our civil servants are. Without a comprehensive, motivating civil servants, you may not be able to do whatever you say you want to do. But I hear nothing from none of you said anything about the strategy, how to improve our civil service, to make them very optimum, to make them know what our responsibilities are with their own technology. Thank you very much.
Thank you. We're going to the last row now, and let's see if we can balance this by gender. Is there any lady on that side? That lady. The lady at the end of that row. Yes, you. Yes.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Lois Bidi. I report for Premium Times. I want to know, you've all mentioned strengthening the institutions, fighting corruption, and tackling it from the grassroots. But you've not mentioned what are the specific things you are doing to strengthen it. Your points are just vague. Strengthening it how, where, with what? You are not being specific, so we don't know what you're going to do about it. Thank you.
All right, I think at this time, in order for them to stay within the grasp of the questions that have been raised, we're going to return to our political leaders and ask them to respond to some of the questions. I'd like to guide this. Anything for the children. And what is your ideal minimum wage? This is because we're going to return to strengthening institutions where you'll have an opportunity to speak. So we will not take that now. So they would have the opportunity, because I will also ask that question. So let's rest that for now. But I'd like you to respond to anything for the children. What do you have for the children of Nigeria? And what is your ideal minimum wage? And each speaker has 2 minutes to address these issues, and I'd like to start with the ACPN.
Yeah, thank you once more. On the issue of minimum wage, definitely, even if you are, whoever you are, if you are paid what cannot take you home, definitely you will be pushed to looking elsewhere. The government of ACPN already has a plan that, apart from increasing minimum wage, the other issue, the major things are: one, to provide free medical care to civil servants, to Nigerians, to provide affordable transportation system, and to provide free education. I said it loud and clear. Nigeria can afford free education if we curb the excesses of very few people at the top. If we curb the excesses, we can provide these services to our people. And this will also discourage corruption. A civil servant who has worked for 30 years, if he or she finds himself or herself looking forward to retirement, and when he checks his pocket or her pocket, he finds that after retirement, he cannot even have a roof over his head. The tendency is for the person to be involved in corruption because he has to hasten up. But in the past, we had governments in this country that made it possible that after working, as you are working there's a contributory pension you pay. And at the end of the day, you owner-occupier, you get a house. And when you know that at the end of your job, you have a roof over your head, the tendency to be corrupt is highly reduced. Like the person that asked questions spoke, the lady, corruption, if you don't tackle it in the civil service, no government can succeed. Thank you very much.
Thank you. African Action Congress presidential candidate.
Thank you. I will address briefly the issue of minimum wage. We are proposing to pay 100,000 naira average to a Nigerian worker. There's no reason why a Nigerian worker would have to work for 38 years before they can earn the monthly salary of a senator in Nigeria, which is 14 million naira. It's unconscionable. So you must get your due so that you don't start thinking about stealing from the day you are hired. But that we are paying a minimum wage of 100,000 don't mean that people won't steal. What we have seen in Nigeria is that people who steal the most are people who are earning the most amount of money and allowances from the country. So it's a social disease. It's called kleptomania. You know, when people have so much and they still steal a lot. And we have to cure it again by consequences. As for the children, it is a crime that a country like Nigeria, making so much money, has become the capital of where a child is likely to die before the age of 5. It is not only bad, but our leaders who are supervising the death of these 5-year-olds ought to be tried for a crime against humanity. That is why Nigeria will become a signatory as soon as I become president. And my swearing in will be June 12th, not May 29, because that's the day that we are proposing. Yes? And as soon as that is done, we will be a signatory to, or any process in an international criminal court, to make corruption a crime against humanity. I'm going to support that so that so many of these leaders who have carried out this crime can face the consequences of their actions and inactions. Finally, regarding what we need to do, we invest in kids. We have to invest in these kids, in terms of prenatal, neonatal, and antenatal care. We also have to take over 13 million kids who are not in school back into school by investing at least 1.3 trillion naira in their education. Take them out of the street so that it will be a crime in this country not to send your child to school the way it is done elsewhere.
People's Democratic Party.
Thank you very much. Well, for the issue of minimum wage, I think those who don't have experience of governance can celebrate figures that are almost not achievable. But as a party that has experience in governance and going by the latest dynamics in the governance process of this country, we will rather support a restructured Nigeria that gives powers to states and local government to the extent that states will be able to tap into their comparative advantage by way of resources and pay wages that are commensurate with standard and quality of living in that area. You do not expect the same person in Lagos to take 30,000 naira warehousing is going for as much as 1 million naira to rent a house, or 500,000, a simple face me, I face you, with someone in the rural area in Jigawa, for example. So what you do as a function of restructuring is to encourage the states to take up issue of minimum wage based on what they can afford. That is one. Secondly, on the issue of healthcare for children, what is there for the children, this issue of restructuring will also empower the local governments with some level of power and authority to be able to promote basic health care for the people. What the government will do is just to provide the enabling environment, because the local government is the closest to the people. The statistics presented by Dr. Kusa are quite alarming. 57 million children don't have access to the common basic health needs. And about 150 million or 130 million thereabout, according to statistics, don't also live in better environments. So for us,
I'm afraid I have to stop you there so we can give way to the Abundant Nigerian Renewal Party. presidential candidate.
Thank you very much. Very quickly, I'll run through this. I think it's an error to try to situate the entire thing called corruption within the civil service. As we talk about the public service, we should also look at the private sector, because it has become a kind of culture, a kind of problem culturally in the country. So we need to think about that. However, I also to note that there are two kinds of civil service. There are the civil servants and the core civil service. The salary of the highest paid director, grade level 17, step 9, is less than 400,000 per month. However, when you go to some of the lucky parastatals, that is what a new entrant who just left university gets. So you begin to think about how that director will feel, who has worked for 33 years and has 2 years to retire. However, moving forward, I want to say that in this country, well, in terms of minimum wage, we'll be looking at about 45,000 for now, because 45,000 is where it takes them back to the 2010, minimum wage. Whereas we also believe that some states should be able to pay more than others, but I think it's only fair, because inflation rate since 2010, when the wages were last increased up till now, is about 62% compounded, meaning that actually people are just living on next to nothing in this country. So we need to think about that, but we are going to look at about 45,000, but because I'm an economist, I know that you have to balance your resources. If we can get a consensus around 30,000, we run with that. However, then again, lastly, I would say that the Human Capital Index done by the World Bank, HCI, gave Nigeria 34%. 34%. And the meaning of that 34% is that any child born in Nigeria has only 34% possibility of attaining their potentials. Now, that is very alarming. Therefore, we've been on the street in ANRP demonstrating that immediately our budget for 2019 should be increased to 15 trillion naira, and we know we can. And there's no excuse whatsoever for people to say that we can't do this because people have been so corrupt and have stolen
That's
so
how much
from
we can take from you now.
Thank
we
you
would
very
like
much.
to go to the Young Progressive Party National Publicity Secretary.
Yes, thank you very much. Let me start by saying the direct consequence of corruption is our placement in the Human Development Index, where presently Nigeria is being ranked second among 157 nations in the world. Now, the Human Development Index is a composite statistics for education and health, for per capita income and life expectancy. As it is today in Nigeria, we currently have over 13.5 million children out of school. Nigeria is the worst place to give birth to children. As it stands today, our life expectancy is being put at 55 years. And as we are speaking, our per capita income is put around, GDP to per capita income is put at less than $2,800. So what are we trying to say in essence? You see the impact of corruption. Now, what are we going to do? What we are doing differently is because probably from the background from which we are coming, we are very young people. And we believe young people should be given the opportunity to be able to pilot the affairs of this country. You can't give what you don't have. If what we have today is as a result of what you were able to do, with due respect to political parties that have ruled for the past almost 20 years, I don't think they are coming to give anything different. If at this stage, as at the last time, the last budget, there was a paltry investment of less than 7% on education and less than 4% on health, how do you want to progress as a nation? So what we will do is to massively raise the budget of education and health. Whether we like it or not, we will not go anywhere as a nation if we do not, increase, the budgetary allocation for health and education. And that said, we also make sure there is an inbuilt mechanism to ensure that money that is being allocated is judiciously spent, utilized for the purpose for which it has been allocated. Then secondly, on the issue of minimum wage, I want to tell you
will not have the chance to discuss that. You will have another opportunity perhaps when we come to other issues raised around that. I'd like to quickly go back to the audience and make a quick round of 30 seconds each by a show of hands. Please keep your questions short and don't repeat what somebody else has asked. That way we will make progress. I'd like to start on this side of the divide and go to the back, to the man who has his glasses on his head.
Good afternoon. My name is Dayo Laidi, and my question is for all the candidates. It is said that an average member of Nigeria's Senate receives about 16 million naira constituency allowance. It comes to about 192 million per annum. And that the members of the House of Rep probably also receive something in similar range. Do you consider this a fair remuneration to any state official at any level at all? What is your party's plan for dealing with this? Thank you.
We're going to the next row because we have to make this quite democratic. We can't take everybody from this row, and we have only 4 questions left, so 3 questions left. So we will take the gentleman with a hat on his head. Oh, with a cap on his head.
Thank you. My name is Chido Onuma. I'm the coordinator of the African Center for Media and Information Literacy. My question goes to all the candidates. Is there a way you think that the structure of this country enables corruption? Thank you.
Thank you. He has kept it short. The lady in red.
Thank you. I have a question for all the candidates. My name is Miriam Bassi Oruboje. I work with Friends of the Earth and the chair of the Alliance for Food Sovereignty in Africa. I've not heard any of you say anything about agriculture. Recently, we've heard of the influx of genetically modified foods in Nigeria. And the same thing has caused, we've heard that Monsanto, the company who is responsible for getting patents for most of these foods, has caused cancer. And somebody actually got a judgment of more than close to millions of naira. We have these products in Nigeria now. And we have this company also giving permits to bring in this. What will happen to our food system? I'm really interested in what is on my plate. What are you going to do about the influx of genetically modified foods and agriculture and small-scale farmers? What are you going to do?
And finally, we're going to that last row, and the very last person on that row, this time with a cap on his head.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Olumide Samson. It has been posited in some quarters that the rule of law is more important than even corruption itself. So my question would be, are we okay with the application of the rule of law? If not, is it okay? If not, what will you do differently and how will you do it differently?
Thank you very much. For that first round of questions and comments, that will be it. And I would like to start with the Young Progressive Party. Before then, let me refresh you quickly what the issues are. Fair remuneration, salaries of, I think it was said, members of the National Assembly, and is there a way that the way Nigeria is structured leads to corruption? And finally, what is on our plate? What kind of food, what kind of imports? And I think also there was a mention of the rule of law, even though we'll come to that later. So if you take the first 3, fair remuneration, is there a way that Nigeria is structured, what is on our plate, and the salaries of our legislators? 2 minutes each.
Yes, I understand. The time is always a problem right here. So please, I'm going to be very, very swift. On the issue of 16 million, which for, what is it called, the National Assembly members, I think that is wicked. If we are here contemplating whether to pay 30,000 naira per month to civil servants, yet we cannot reach a conclusion, and some people are earning 16 million for, I don't know for what is uncalled for. But I think there is a need for us to review our wage system. This issue of allowances, that is where you see most of this money are being eaten into. If you ask them the actual way, they might tell you that they're not earning up to 1 million naira. So there's a need for a real audit. And I still want to advocate, and that's what my party stands for, that national lawmaking should be part-time. It should be on a part-time basis. Let those who really have the genuine interest of this nation come to the National Assembly. That said, something will be done about that. Is uncalled for, is unsustainable. On the issue of this present structure, does it encourage corruption? The answer is absolutely yes. Right from the time that the military took over, they've centralized, the system, and that has made corruption to fester up to what we have right now. And I want to tell you that except we restructure, we might not be able to completely tackle the issue of corruption. And quickly, on the issue of genetically enhanced food, what we have on it is a global problem right now, it's a global phenomenon, and I think Africans are actually not taking it seriously, especially when you consider that these imports are far cheaper than what you even have here in the country. So what we will do is that there will be a clear-cut policy on it. It's going to be banned. Anything we cannot produce, we should not consume. Let's consume what we produce. By then, we can grow.
Thank you. It's time to come to you now, Abundant Nigerian Renewal Party presidential candidate.
Thank you very much. I'll be very, very, very quick. I want to quickly say that the effects of corruption include disunity, poverty, deaths. For example, we saw someone who was cleaning bins with sniper the other time. Deaths, inequality, terrorism, loss of individual and corporate, dignity. Also segregation, class society, and accidents. People build houses with the wrong materials and people die. So therefore, it's an endemic issue in this country. And also, I want to say that Lee Kuan Yew, it was who said that the biggest demographic in any country are the children unborn. And I want us to think about that the biggest demographic in any country are the children unborn. So we're going to make it into a philosophy in our government that we must always think about the children unborn. And then after that, then we think about the children that are here now. And everything must be done to protect them, because the society will be judged by how you treat your most vulnerable people. And that said, we have been again on the streets, and we're saying that starting now, our budgets should be reviewed in a way that will favor the poorest people and the most vulnerable people in our country. According to Adamufika report, 25% of our budget, as at 2010 and going forward, is spent by 18,000 top people who are top politicians and top civil servants. They spend all of 25% of our budget. This is unacceptable. And in saying that, we are also saying that this country should be growing our economy at 15 to 20%. So it's a kind of vision we bring to the table. Therefore, we don't actually support this idea where senators, because people are earning so much because they can. Totally unacceptable. We support, a part-time legislature. Also, we believe that the structure of this country is not helping. However, that restructuring should be written into the constitution of this country, because you are never going to get a perfect structure. So it's something you have to keep working on every 3 to 4 years. Thank you very much.
People's Democratic Party.
Thank you very much. Just earlier on, I said it would be good for citizen ownership of government. And that's where the issue of remuneration for senators and lawmakers come in. It is very easy for you to say 16 million for senator is unacceptable, it's all of this, it's all of that. But in practice, have we considered that our politics is so monetized to the point that it takes two to tango, both the electorate and those who are seeking public office. When they come with you with money, you collect money, you are indirectly telling them that they can do anything they like with the budget and the finances and resources of the country. So what we should do on our own side as followers is for us to continue to insist that we demonetize the electoral process and the politics process that threw up such a lawmaker and a senator who will go there to reap your destiny and reap that of your children's destiny in the name of making laws for the good governance of the country. So that is where issue of restructuring also come in place. If you have restructuring, you will not have one almighty Abuja, they call it federal might, that beats down on the throat of all the states. What you will have is a federal government that would lay emphasis on economy, defense, and rule of law, then allow the states to take charge of their resources, and they pay remuneration of royalty or fines to the federal center. And that takes me to the issue of agriculture. What we will do as a government is to reform the land use system. At present, the idea of thinking that federal government owns what is in my little village of Okwela is out of the way. If you want to prospect anything or mining or what have you, by the time you see the laws, one man is sitting down here as a permanent secretary, dishing out orders of what happens in the resources that happen in my own village.
That's about all we can take on that issue at this moment. And I would quickly like us to go to the African Action Congress.
Thank you. I will address directly the issue of genetically modified food first and foremost. I'm totally opposed to genetically modified food. And I will be sending a message to people who tie that to aid, that if you have to give us money so that we can kill ourselves, you might as well just shove your aid. And I'm going to ensure that we have food security in this country, grow our own food that is healthy, that is natural and organic. And we can do it, not only feed ourselves, we can feed the African continent with a landmass and our agricultural system if it's revolutionized. So that's my position. On these senators, we have to do a little bit of radicalism with even our structure. We don't need a bicameral legislative system in Nigeria. It's just too wasteful, and it has become the coven of thieves. All the retired governors go to the Senate after they have looted their states. We should not be funding that. It should be part of the restructuring debate that we can make do with a unicameral legislative system of part-time legislators. They don't have bicameral legislative system in Senegal. They've completed the second airport. They don't have it in South Korea. What are we doing with it here? That is why they have so much money. They not only engage in stealing our money, they engage in crime. We have senators in this country that are cited for armed robbery, murder, because they are just living large on our backs. On the issue of the structure of Nigeria, I have to say that everything Nigeria, with due respect, and I'm sorry, there's just too much fraud about Nigeria, because it was set up by the colonialists as a business, not as a nation. But we cannot continue to give that excuse as a reason why we can't fix our own country at this time. Even the name Nigeria was obtained from the girlfriend of Lord Lugard. It wasn't us that gave. Look at the Nigerian flag, tasteless, just black, well, white and green. A lot of things needs to be done.
Okay, that's all we can take on this issue at this time. Allied Congress Party of Nigeria. One house, please. Allied Congress Party of Nigeria. One house.
I want to focus on the issue of restructuring. Nigeria needs to be restructured for us to make progress. If you recall, some decades back, when each region was producing whatever they had and was paying tax to the center, where every region was growing. We had granite pyramids in the north, we had cotton, we had palm produce in the east, we had cocoa in the west. And these places were moving forward. Cocoa house was not built with oil resources. Since we got into this central system and oil, everything started going down. So ACPN government, if voted into office, will really embark on serious restructuring so that people will know their potentials and move at their own pace. Not somebody being somewhere in Abuja to dictate for us what happens elsewhere. I'm from an oil producing state, local government in Delta State. I know what we go through. I'm the Secretary General of my community. I know what we go through from the ills the oil company trample on our land. And when you go to get redress, it is almost impossible. So that is on restructuring. Now on salaries and wages. It is inhuman, it is wicked, it is callous, it is undescribable for people to receive senators, be governors, to get those, mind you, it's allowances. They tell you salary is peanuts, but allowances. If a governor travels to his village on a weekend, he gets allowance for going to his village. All these things will not be part of our government. And they are part of the things that has kept Nigeria where we are. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed. You're watching the big debate organized by the Center for Democracy and Development, supported by the MacArthur Foundation, live on Channels TV. And also you can go to our Facebook page, CDD West Africa. We've begun to receive comments and questions from our social media pages, and I'd like you to take note of them. and I'll read some of those questions and comments to you. What is your party's position on the current system of manual assets declaration, which is not publicly accessible? What is your party's position on the current system of manual assets declaration that is not publicly accessible? Do you have any plan for reforming the current assets declaration regime? How do you intend to institutionalize transparency in asset declaration? Basically, the same question on different sides of the coin. And there is, I imagine, strong call for international court against corruption to hold leaders that escape local laws to account using international instruments. Any plan to support this? And what is your take on this? So these are the two questions that I'm going to pause and have you address very quickly as we're running against time. So I'll ask you to look at the various sides of the conversation and pick one side and then try to address them in 1 minute before we return to the issues we want to pursue further. 1 minute to every candidate on this. And I would like to start very quickly with Allied Congress Party of Nigeria.
Yes. On the issue of a manual assets declaration, our government will practice, you come to the public and declare your assets. It's not a question of you write to anybody, but you declare to the Nigerian public, not to any institution. You declare your assets publicly to Nigerian people. And as you declare, Nigerian people are the people to scrutinize whatever you have put in to them. That is one. Then, on the issue of transparency, you all know that our presidential candidate is Dr. Obi Ezekwesili. She is the co-founder of Transparency International, and we have seen it work since her emergence in our party. Everything we have done has been transparently done. So if she's voted into power with the support of our party, Nigerians know it is guaranteed, because today we have the best presidential candidate for 2019.
African Action Congress.
Thank you very much. I will be completely opposed to the use of manual declaration of assets should be digitized. Not only would I digitize it, but it's also important to apply some of that technologies to asset declarations, so that on the website of the asset the Code of Conduct Bureau, you can actually geolocate the home of your public officials, on Google Maps, so that you can view it from above and from the street. So that if people are declaring assets that don't exist, Google will tell you, and everybody will know. And if they have declared an asset that is not their own, the owner of the asset can cry out, and we can have commentaries about it, and we make it public. So that's something I support. I wish I can address other issues. I guess we'll get to it later.
People's Democratic Party.
Well, we will subscribe to the idea of public declaration of assets. Making it digital will not be a one fell swoop, because it will take a process. As much as we'll encourage people to declare their asset publicly, we will also encourage the citizenry having access to it to raise concerns and interrogate what you have put on the table as your assets. That way, they will be able to measure what you have when you are entering into governance and what you have acquired when you are coming out. And that way, you will enhance transparency in government and accountability. The whole essence of anti-corruption is all about disclosure. Once you have disclosure, your problem is halfway solved. But what we have now is people will declare assets. Even the citizens do not have access to those documents.
Abundant Nigerian Renewal Party.
Thank you very much. I'll say there are two issues here. First thing is that in terms of international instruments, cooperation and all of that, for people who are corrupt in Nigeria, yes, we will support, but we will first of all try to see how we can deal with our issues here. In terms of asset declaration, this is a very important issue for Nigeria. I remember that Umaru Musa Yar'Adua, president, who is late now, is the one that actually laid the only example, and we actually thought that we would build on that. Unfortunately, we went down south. So basically, he declared his asset and forced his deputy then who did not want to declare his asset. So we're going to be doing that a lot. And we're going to be looking at transparency in general. If you went to South Africa right now, you can Google the budgets of Johannesburg and you'll see it in PDF. You can Google the budget of Cape Town. But if you Google the budget of Lagos State or any of our states, you won't see anything. So asset declaration, open asset declaration, there's no two ways about it. And it's even inside the constitution of our party. Inside the constitution of our party, ANRP, and we'll be saying that anybody that's interested should go into anrp.org.ng and you will see it there live. Thank you very much.
Young Progressive Party.
Yes, thank you very much. Only mentally lazy leaders will tell you that it is difficult to actually institute an e-governance regime. That said, I want to say that we have the best presidential candidate in the person of Professor Kingsley Moghalu. And he is the one who actually initiated the idea of BVN, for the records. Now, on manual asset declaration, I want to put it clear that it is totally unacceptable. At this point in time, in the 21st century, we are still talking about doing something as simple as this manually. What is the Ministry of ICT doing? You want to tell me they cannot develop software? You see young men and women who can develop software under 1 month that will help to trash all of these problems. So most things are not going to be done manually. They are going to be electronically done. We are going to institute an e-governance regime, which means to say the government processes and procedure will be automated. Thank you very much.
Thank you. We're in the second tranche now. We don't have much time, so I'm going to put the questions to you now, and I'll combine some of the questions in order for you to manage them. At this time, we're going to be taking only 2 minutes for you to deal with these questions. Some people have argued that corruption cannot be addressed because the key agencies are corrupt. Some of them are saying the police, some of them are saying the judiciary. How does your party intend to address this problem? And I'd like to start with the People's Democratic Party.
Well, when I said earlier on that there will be institutional reforms, I also went further to say that what we have in place, the EFCC, ICPC, Code of Conduct Bureau and all of that, will enjoy independence, will enjoy a non-partisan approach to the extent that government will take itself away from it and see it as independent as it could be. That is one. Presently, the recruitment system into the EFCC and ICPC is shrouded in secrecy. That also opens room for corruption because that is what promotes nepotism, cronyism, favoritism, selective amnesia, and what have you. And you are getting people who are expected to be anti-corruption watchdogs into a system. Yet, the processes of recruitment is shrouded in secrecy. To that extent, our government will ensure that there is an open, merit-driven process of recruitment into EFCC, as well as promoting the process of ensuring that there's public disclosure of resources getting into EFCC. I'm not sure if you throw the question here, anybody will tell you this is the budget of the EFCC for 2019 or 2018. Everything is shrouded in secrecy. How much money do you invest in pursuing a case? Somebody has stolen 10 million naira, are you going to invest 30 million to chase it? So, our government will ensure that the books are kept open. EFCC has not published audited report in the last 15, 16 years since its existence. Why is it so? If you are not doing the right things as an agency of government, you have no business coming to interrogate me while I'm not doing the right thing. So the charity will begin at the home of EFCC, ICPC, and other anti-corruption agencies to the extent that people will have a say in what goes on there. But this idea of...
I'm sorry, I have to stop you there. We'll go to African Action Congress.
Yeah, I think part of the problem we've had over these years is that we are relying too much on these ad hoc organizations to address corruption without thinking about institutionalizing the anti-corruption fight. Apart from the established organizations, I also think that we should strengthen the police. It's actually the job of the police to catch corrupt people. That is why whenever you set up the organization, you go back to the police to look for people to carry out enforcement. So why don't we strengthen our police, train them properly? You know, look, we might keep saying that the police is the most corrupt, but it's the same police that produce Nuhu Ribadu. In fact, every time we are looking for the most non-corrupt human being to fight corruption, we go to the Nigerian police. So we have to focus on our police, in addition to the existing organization, but I also have to support, and I'm sorry to agree with him on that one, that I support the independence of the EFCC. Right now, for you to get prosecution of anyone in Nigeria, the EFCC must first carry your file to the villa. And if the villa says don't touch the person will not be prosecuted. If they say touch the person, it doesn't matter how clean the person is, EFCC will find something against you. When you are talking about, you say, don't mention names of people. Look, one of the things we have to seriously be talking about, we have to be mobilizing shame against people who are stealing and destroying the country. Because they have a home address, they have a surname, they have a first name. It's the reason why I was so appalled not to see APC people here today, because we have mentioned the likes of Akpabio and Odius Okalu, who are undergoing investigation and corruption, who are members of the party. The same way we can talk about Saraki and the rest of them, who are the major operators of the PDP. We have to mention names. There's nothing we can do about it, because people destroy this country. They have names, they are driving cars, they register the cars, they are living in mansions on our back. And we are here saying, don't talk about them. I'm sorry.
It's a rule of the debate, sir.
We have to talk about them.
If you are part of this debate, you have to keep the rule of the debate. I'm afraid. You have to keep the rule of the debate. That's the rules of the debate.
The rules cannot preclude us talking about things that are
the rules as it is made in broadcasting is expected that you do not do that when you're on the podium. This is a platform you have been given. I would expect you to respect the rules.
We don't have to fight.
No, I'm doing my job, sir. I'm doing my job. I'd like to go now to Mr. Tope Fasua, Abundant Nigerian Renewal Party. How does your party intend to address police, judiciary, and those agencies that have been seen by some people as corrupt?
Thank you very much. I believe that, again, I'll repeat that we should begin to have a very holistic view of corruption in Nigeria. When we say judiciary, we even have a problem with the courts. Unfortunately, there's a certain case going on now, which is sub judice. We won't speak about that. But on both sides, we can see that there are faults on both sides. And some time back also, some judges were raided. I felt so bad about it. But later on, I started hearing a lot of stories about that. So that's not good enough. So we can't situate it only in the judiciary. Of course, we talked about the legislation. What about the executive? When you hear budget padding, the reason why the guys in the legislation, why they pad the budget, is because they know that every item on the budget is owned by somebody in this country, even in the executive, which is not good enough. So, again, the police is unfortunately the one we bash the most. Again, as my friend Sowore said, it is true that when you set up EFCC or ICPC, you have to go to the police to look for those who are going to do that. However, there are 400,000 people in the Nigerian police. 200,000 of them are carrying bags for people. According to the police themselves, according to the former chairman of the PSC, Michael Kiro, 50% of our Nigerian police are bag carriers for people. That's not good enough. What we did is we destroyed the police. And so no matter how many of these agencies we create, we're going to have the same institutional problems. The problem with the institution in this country is that people who are maybe politicians and so-called powerful people, and those are the people that we're going to demystify. And we're demystifying them by running for presidency in this country to let them know that they are ordinary human beings and we can do a better job with this country. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much indeed. We're going to YPP.
Yes, thank you very much. The success of institutions will only be complementary to whatever role the leaders are willing to play. And that is why we are not taking the issue of leadership for granted. Because those who will run institutions, however, how strong an institution is only can be traced to the kind of leaders you have. Now, what are we trying to say in essence? We are trying to say that it is possible to fight corruption. It is not impossible. The only problem is this, that we have refused to fight corruption beyond the issue of just paying lip service to fighting corruption. We need leaders with political will to dispassionately look at the nation as, the overall, most important institution beyond, component institutions. Now, On the issue of institutions being that they are laden with corrupt people, I said the same police we castigate every now and then are the same police that go and perform creatively well in international service. What is the difference? Why do they perform there and they refuse to perform here? The answer is simple. The fact is that when you are within a system that works, you adjust. If you are in Rome, you behave like the Romans. But ironically, what they have here is an Egypt, and you see our police behave like Egyptians. So I want to say in essence that leadership is core, is key, is very, very germane. That we begin to look at the kind of leaders we put at the end of affairs. We need leaders with proven integrity. We need leaders who have capacity to be able to deliver and look beyond the issue of what we have right now and see Nigeria as the overall most important institution. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much indeed. And now the Allied Congress Party of Nigeria.
Yeah, on police, we witnessed in this country some decades ago, I always say it, where we never had EFCC, we never had ICPC. But the Nigeria police, their CID section was very effective and efficient. Better than the DSS or TTC we have today. You see those days, policemen under the CID section will go and wine and dine with criminals and plan operation with armed robbers, because armed robbery was the in thing then. And on the day of the robbery, they will get them arrested. That is how the police worked when we had a fairly independent police force. But today, we have agencies here and there, yet we are not getting results. So we should ask ourselves the question, where did we go wrong? Another good example is Federal Ministry of Works. They created FEMA, they created this, and yet they award contracts to their cronies, to different companies. In our ACPN government, we will mobilize and strengthen Ministry of Works. Provide them, we have qualified engineers, they provide them with the equipment, they will do our roads. We don't need FEMA, we don't need all these other agencies. That's on that part. Then on the police has to be strengthened. And we forget about all these agencies here and there. If you effectively make police to be independent, which is part of what we are going to do, the appointment of IG or Commissioner of Police will have nothing to do with our government. It will be an institution on its own. It will be allowed to thrive. And you get the best of police. Like my colleague said, when our Nigeria police go elsewhere to do peacekeeping, they excel because they are provided with enabling good environment, which we don't provide here. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed. You're watching the big debate organized by the Center for Democracy and Development with support from the MacArthur Foundation, live on Channels Television. We're going to take the last question. And this last question applies to the political parties. And I'd like to give it only 1 minute, 30 seconds. Our time is fast spent. So Mr. Timekeeper, please take note of 1 minute, 30 seconds. It's an important question, so I'd like you to please focus. Party primaries threw up a lot of corruption issues with allegations of vote buying and bribery of party officials. If the political class is implicated, why should Nigerians believe parties when they talk about combating corruption? And I would like to start with the African Action Congress.
Well, we're a new party, and we've only been 4 months. We started as a movement before then that had been around for 9 months. And within 4 months, we have shown character, we've shown competence, we've shown transparency. Our party, as I'm standing in front of you, has 3,999,000 naira in its account. It's not been touched. No party, especially the established ones, can tell you how much they have, because they have too much money. And we have been able to set up all over the country. We have traveled to 33 states with less than 100 million naira. What we want to do is also ensure that we sanitize the political system in such a way that people no longer believe in money. We demystify money. People will tell you that if you don't have money, you can't contest for the presidency. Is a lie. You can contest for the presidency of Nigeria if you don't have money, if people give you money. And we receive money. I have received almost 99 million naira today from GoFundMe, which is transparently available publicly, and also from contribution from a Zenith bank account we set up. And with that, we traveled around this country. So what we're saying is that our party is not engaged in any form of corruption. Regardless of what our friend was trying to insinuate here, you know, they try to tar other people with the kind of their own dirty brush, you know. But our party is available to be scrutinized. We are not buying any votes. I don't give money to anybody. I don't give money to police. It's the reason why I don't have police protection, because the police people want me to pay them for it. I say I can't afford to pay police to protect me.
Mr. February, People's Democratic Party.
Well, thank you. I can excuse Sowore because he represents one of the briefcase parties, so he can sit, you know, just register a party, be the sole candidate, and collect money from people. You declare that you have received 99 million naira, and you are telling us that only 3.9 million is left. That means you have spent up to that amount. But you've forgotten to tell us how much dollars, because you have an online account where people were paying dollars into. You have not told us that. So, no, I'm making my point. Let me have mine. So, just to tell you that anybody who wants to talk about anti-corruption must also come with clean hands. Having said that, the party primaries process, like you said, for the big parties, the competition is always rife, and it boils down to the issue of trying to find, you know, platforms where we can begin to talk of demonetizing the primaries process, the electoral process. Because the moment you give money and somebody takes, then you are indirectly buying his conscience and you are taking over his destiny. So what we should do as political parties, as Nigerians, is to create opportunity for people to begin to interrogate processes of primaries, of party, processes of throwing up leadership, so that in the final analysis, whatever they do will also reflect in the psyche of what obtains in their respective political parties. Thank you.
Abundant Nigeria Renewal Party.
Well, thank you very much. Regarding primaries, what I would want to say is that a lot of Nigerians are agitated. INEC came out with the statistics of voters the other time. 22 million of them were students. About more than 50% were young people, or even 60%. And there's a reason why we're agitating. If you look at some of the older parties, some of them they come from a long tradition. However, the tradition got bad over time. You can trace APC back to Action Group, became UPN, became SDP, became AD, became ACN, and all of that. However, so there's a lot of value in the young people of this country joining some of the new parties. But before you join the party, go and find out what they're about. In terms of primaries in ANRP, the computer party, and I always want to point to that, computer party. Thank you very much. In terms of our primaries, what we do is option A4, what we do is direct primaries. There's no secret ballot, there's no bribery of people. Even if you bribe someone, you will see the person queuing up behind somebody else. So there's no point, you know. The transparency is
Thank you very much, sir.
That was 30 seconds to go.
Was that 30 seconds? I apologize.
Yes, I have 1 minute more now. Thank you.
My sincere apologies.
So in terms of this option for transparency is for now. Technology is for now. We live in the age of artificial intelligence, big data, connectivity. You know, we live in the age of robotics. We live in the age of total transparency. And so the youth of this country should rise up and do something of your own. Enough of queuing behind mediocrity, because I believe we can do it. Thank you very much.
Thank you, and thank you. YPP.
Yes, thank you very much. For Young Progressives Party, I want to tell you unequivocally that we actually organized a very transparent process. Ours was open. It was also an option A4 system that we adopted. You know, and at the end of the day, it threw up somebody in the mode of Professor Kingsley Moghalu, whom we all know that with all his competence and ability and capacity, may not be able to pick such ticket from the traditional parties. However, that said, I want to tell you that we uphold the sanctity of transparency and accountability in high regard. If you go through our motto, unity, service, and accountability, accountability is one of our core values. We hold it in high esteem. And that is why somebody, or Professor Kingsley Moghalu, and I say again, we're proving integrity. 17 years in United Nations, 5 years in Central Bank of Nigeria, you know what he's got to offer. Now, is it possible? Yes, I want to tell you emphatically that it is possible. The choice is entirely ours. Do you want to commit your future to those who have brought you to where you are today? Or you feel there's a need for a paradigm shift, a solid movement that will see us throw out these recycled politicians? I want to appeal to everyone at this point in time listening to us that it is time to support a generational shift. Let's start the real change, right now in Nigeria. It's a movement. We are calling on everyone to please support this movement. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And finally, Allied Congress Party of Nigeria.
We in the Allied Congress Party of Nigeria believe in tackling every problem from the roots. On the issue of party primaries and party processes, it is important that we should practice what other democracies do. There has to be, the political parties are like institutions, and they have to be provided for by the government. Party funding is very, very important in Nigeria, and it is not happening here. The last time we made a presentation to Jega, he said until it is legislated, he will not do it. Then the two big parties then, PDP and APC, they have all the senators. They don't care, they know how they get their funding. They didn't bother about it. So if we are talking about transparency and all that in party processes, party funding must take place. Government must fund political parties so that no one big man will come and own political party. We have gone in ICP and we have gone through sacrifices. We rejected people who came with their millions to pick our ticket. And we looked at credible candidates. We picked Dr. Obieze Kwesili. She did not pay millions of naira to the party to get that ticket. And we made sure she was the sole candidate in that primaries. So what I'm saying is that on that, our party has done very well. And what we're also saying is that party funding is important to enable the process, enable responsible people come to take political office.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And on that note, we've come to the end of the debate on corruption and accountability organized by the Center for Democracy and Development. We want to thank the African Action Congress, ACPN, PDP, ANRP, and YPP for taking time to join us, and our lovely audience for participating. I'd like at this point to bring this to a close and to thank you all for participating both at home and here. My name is Eugenia Abu. It has been a pleasure to serve.